Hey, so, hey. Thanks for the introduction, Larry. No pressure, you know? Well, you know what, though? It's good because I was reading a whole thing about how smart people actually find toilet humor and fart jokes pretty funny, so I'm starting to think I might actually have a pretty high IQ. But you know, speaking of high IQ, Stephen Hawking, right? Did you know that he actually cheated on his wife? Like, when they planned it out, and it was with one of his nurses, her name was Amelia, and they planned the whole thing out, and they took a long period of time to figure it all out, and then it was right before he died, and after he died, I don't know how, but they got caught, and someone said to her, "What do you have to say for yourself?" And she said, "Honestly, I'm just glad I had one last stroke of genius." Yeah, growing up, I lived with my family. Well, I was with my family. I mean, I would hope I did. But we were a very tight-knit family. We were pretty close. We used to play a lot of like board games and video games. And the family favorite was definitely Mario Kart. But unfortunately, my dad beat me a lot. But you know what? At least I always won when we played Mario Kart. And also, I think it was Rachel. You said you had a bunch of like frozen animals in your freezer or something. Or sorry,
yeah, they're still
Rebecca
there.
or Rachel? Okay, yeah. But well, my parents they fed us venison when we were a kid once. And they didn't tell us what it was, and they wanted it to be a surprise, and they tried to make us guess. And eventually we asked them for a hint, and my mom says, or my dad said, "It's what mommy calls me sometimes." My sister dropped her fork and said, "Don't eat it, it's an asshole." So yeah, also I was actually very close with my family as well, like my grandma and my grandfather. Unfortunately, they both passed away. My grandmother, she was in the hospital. And when she was dying in the hospital, there was this really crotchety old lady that was in the ward, and she was terrible to all the patients, or the nurses, because she would like call them all kinds of racial slurs, and she was just really mean. And whenever she was really mean to them, they'd just walk up and just quietly inject her with a sedative, and she'd just pass out. And sometimes I think, though, that would be great if you could do that in any job, because like I work for tech support, and I always love to imagine, like, sometimes I forget the power I have, because I would love if someone was pissing me off, and I just went in the system and just, deleted their account. Uh-oh, I can't find your account in the system. And another thing too is I think that like people should have to have a license to have a computer, because sometimes there was this old lady and she used to call us a lot, and I think she was really fucking with us because she used to call and like she used to say she would click on her email and we said, "Okay, well, what's on your desktop now?" And she was like, "Well, there's a stapler and some pens." No, like on the computer. And she was like, "Oh, well, there's a photo of me and my husband." And we're like, "No, not on the PC, on the actual screen." And she said, "The PC, actually, I'm a liberal."
Oh my God.
So, my grandfather, on the other hand, though, he was actually a bus driver. And he was a great bus driver. He drove buses until he retired. Or no, he didn't retire. He drove the buses until he died. When he passed away very peacefully in his sleep, which was great. And I always think, that's how I would want to die. Not screaming in terror like all of his passengers.
Oh, no.
My grandfather did always tell me, though, too, as well, that he always told me that, like, some of the most three interesting topics in the world is politics, religion, and sex. So he had a lot of dirty jokes. And I've always been a fan of dirty jokes. Does anyone know what this is? Do you know what this is? You ever heard of that before? Anyone? No?
Yeah.
The shocker?
Yeah.
Right? 2 in the pink and 1 in the stink?
Yeah.
Okay, but what do you do if you go down there and neither of them are pink and they both stink? Because I dated this girl once, right? And I learned when I was younger that like if somebody washes their hair every day and then they stop washing their hair, the next day if they miss a day, their hair gets really greasy. Well, but I also learned that like vaginas are supposed to be self-cleaning and they're very naturally acidic. And this girl that I dated, she used to use soap in there, which I guess you're not supposed to do. So it made she kind of smelled like vinegar down there, unfortunately. And I have to say, after she dumped me, it really left a sour taste in my mouth. Years later, though, she actually had a kid as well. After we broke up, it's not mine. But before she had the kid, when she was pregnant, she always said she didn't want to ever have an ultrasound, didn't want to know the gender of the baby, nothing. And then she said she wanted to be surprised, but I heard from everybody that they were very surprised when a pickle actually came flying out. So, I actually also have a lot of health problems, unfortunately. Like I have to go to a lot of doctors and see a lot of specialists. One of the health conditions I was actually born with is that like the vertebrae in my spine are like didn't grow normally, so my spine is very misshapen. So some mornings I wake up and like my height actually fluctuates, so my spine can actually grow and shrink 2 inches sometimes. And I have to say that's not the only body part of mine that can grow and shrink 2 inches. And you know, another time actually, I was at the doctor, and the doctor also one day, like I've dated men, I've dated women. I'm actually married to a transgender man right now, and I like to call my little Hannah Montana because I got the best of both worlds. But when I went to the doctor one day, the doctor said, you know, they told me there's this new test where they can actually determine if you're bisexual or not. So I decided to take the test, and I found out I actually am bipolar. All right, what else? Yeah, so I don't know if anyone is a mechanic here, if anyone knows a lot about cars, anything like that at all, but I actually found out there's a loophole with the car parts, where if you get a car part replaced, and then it breaks down within a certain amount of kilometers at a certain time, then you can just get it fixed, and they'll replace it for free. Because see, like, unfortunately, I can't really afford going to fast food anymore because my car repair bills got too expensive. Because I borrowed the car, my grandmother left the car to me after she passed away, and before then it actually never had a single major engine repair done. And then she went on, and like after she passed away, she would always get mad at me if I ever drove someone who doesn't love cheeseburgers. I would sometimes take her car to the drive-thru at like 3 a.m, and she used to get really mad at me. And so she told me one day, if I ever did it again, I would rue the day. So after she passed away, of course, I started doing that, and then I realized there's a pattern. If I take the car to the drive-thru, I can hear her screaming at me, like, "Oh, I'm gonna rue this day!" And then the next day, I'll be a major engine part fails. But because of that mechanic loophole, the last time I went to the drive-thru, the alternator failed, and I had to get a new one. But then I ended up going back within the warranty period, and they replaced it for free. So I've just been eating nothing but fast food for the past month. I think I'm on my 15th alternator now. Okay, so I got a new one. I got one new one, and then I'm done after that. So this is a new joke I wrote. When me and my family were like sitting at a big round table or a big dinner, like a table full of people, at a party, and there was a construction worker and a police officer. And at one point, the police officer was talking about somebody who blew on the breathalyzer and they blew under. And then later on, at one point, the construction worker was talking about someone they hired working under the table. And then all of a sudden, my dad, I guess he wasn't paying attention, got really mad at my mom because he thought she was giving someone a blowjob under the table. All right, well, thank you very much.
Yes, hey, we're going for Anna Marie.